As we continue coverage of the Karen Reed trial out of Massachusetts, on the stand now, one of the many Alberts that is involved. Nicole Albert is the wife of Brian Albert. We expect he may testify as early as this afternoon. Their house is the house upon which, where the lawn that is attached to their house, is where they found John O'Keefe. So let's go back in for more of that testimony.
So, Ms. Albert, without any sort of specifics of your conversation with Ms. McCabe, you had a conversation with her, is that correct?
Yes.
And about how long did that conversation go on for in your case?
With just her? I mean, we were all just kind of sitting around the table talking.
And just to be clear, when we say all, who is all at this point?
It was me, my husband, and Jennifer and Matt.
And at some point later on, did other people come over to your house?
Yes, at some point, my friend Brian Higgins, my husband's friend Brian Higgins, came over.
And do you know how he came to be at your house that morning?
I believe Brian called him to let him know. I mean, he had been with us the night before, and I think he had been friends with John and Karen, so Brian thought he should let him know.
And do you know about what time that was or how long it was after the officers left that Mr. Higgins came over?
Could have been 15, 20 minutes. I feel like he came somewhere around 7:38, and maybe the link had been done by 7:15. If he was around 6:30, I'm not really sure of specifics.
And what happened then?
Then we were all just still kind of sitting there. Kerry, who is another person that was called that morning, she had been at the hospital, so she was kind of calling Jennifer, giving updates as to what was happening with John. So we were kind of waiting to hear how he was, if he was okay. Then around, I don't know if it was 8:30, I had noticed my sister-in-law, Julie, had pulled into the driveway, and I saw her get out, and she was putting a box of donuts in my son's car, whose birthday it was, because they had a bit between them where every year she did that. She got him donuts, and she would leave them for him. So I saw her, and I said to my husband, "Oh."
Objection.
Okay, not what you said to your husband. So wait for another question.
Okay, sorry.
That's okay.
You spoke to her husband, and where did he go?
He went to the door because Julie was about to get back in her car and leave, and I thought that she should be made aware of what was going on.
And so your husband goes to the door, and at some point, your sister-in-law, Julie, comes into the house?
Yes.
And if you know about how long a period was Julie at your house initially that morning?
An hour or two. I'm not sure.
If you're not sure, you're not sure. So as far as people that were over your house that morning, do you have any idea of sort of how long people were congregating around your house after that initial Ms. McCabe bursting into your bedroom?
Again, it could have been between an hour and two.
And at some point, you had mentioned that the Canton officers had indicated that you may be spoken to at some subsequent time by troopers from the state police, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Yes.
And when was it that you, if you know, when was it in relation to this date that you spoke to anybody from the state police?
I wasn't interviewed for a couple days later.
And do you recall where you were when you were interviewed?
I was at my house.
Now, with reference to, you indicated that on the way back from the waterfall to your house at Fairview on the night previous, on the 28th into the 29th, it had just started to snow, is that correct?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Now, when you looked outside or opened the door for Officer Lank as he came into the house, what, if anything, did you observe as far as the weather and how it had changed in the interim?
Well, to me, it was starting to look like blizzard conditions. It was very windy. It was snowing. It was you know, the snow was starting to come down a lot now, and it was probably a couple inches accumulated, and it was, you know.
Now, at any point in time over the course of that day on the 29th, did you yourself, did you go outside from your house into the front yard or the driveway or anywhere else?
I didn't.
And anyone else from your house other than the people coming and going? The people that live there, did you observe them going out into the front of the house area?
No.
May I approach the witness?
Yes.
Ms. Albert, I'm placing before you a series of 8 photographs. I just asked you to look at them, review them, and then just look up whenever you finish.
Are these already in evidence?
Fair enough. Okay. And just to ask you, ma'am, in general, in those photographs, do you recognize what's in those photographs?
Yes.
Okay, what do you recognize those to be?
That's my front yard.
That was your front yard when you lived at 34 Fairview Road?
Yes.
Okay. And what's contained in there, is that a fair and accurate portrayal of around the time of January 29th, 2022?
Yes.
Your Honor, the Commonwealth will seek to introduce and admit.
Any objection, Ms. Little?
No objection, Your Honor.
Thank you. Yes, please.
And again, Ms. Albert, do you recognize what's up on the screen there?
Yes.
And what do you recognize as?
It was my home at the time.
And from this photograph, do you see that front door area where the foyer is and the side door area that you were talking about on your house?
Yes.
If you could, using the laser pointer in your hand, just direct the jury's attention to where each of those are and indicate where they are.
That would be the very front door, and then the side door is over here, in between.
And as far as the sort of what's in the front portion of this photograph, do you recognize that as if I'm standing and facing as this photograph is your house, where you lived at 34 Fairview Road? What, if anything, do you have as sort of a landmark or an item that you observe in that sort of left area of the yard?
Flagpole?
Is there a fire hydrant there as well?
Yes.
And do you see anything as far as like a box or something like that?
Yeah, I believe there was some electrical box that I don't think we ever actually knew what it was or what it did.
So fair to say all the years that you lived there, it's not something that you utilized or even knew what it really did?
No.
Now this particular area of the yard, in its relation to the house, was that a part of the yard that was used or utilized by the family all that much when you lived there?
No.
And that part of the yard where the fire hydrant, flagpole, that is, how close is that to sort of the next door neighbors abutting of the property?
It's pretty close. It's almost, I would say, on the, you know, close to the property line.
Now, as far as from the side of the road, in between sort of the curbing from the roadway and your front lawn, there's nothing there as far as a sidewalk or anything like that, is that correct?
Right.
And the curbing that's between sort of the roadway and the front lawn, how would you describe that? Is it a sharp curb, rounded curb?
It was kind of a rounded curb.
Now, with reference to your driveway, do you see that depicted in this particular photograph?
You can't really see it in the picture, no. But I mean, it's would be over here.
Thank you.
Yeah.
If I could direct your attention to the next photograph that you have before you. Ms. Gilman, if I could have that one up on the screen as well. And again, Ms. Albert, you recognize what's up on the screen?
Yes.
And this is just another photograph of your home as it was around January 2022 at 34 Fairview Road.
Yes.
And from this photograph, do you see now sort of the driveway and where that is?
Yes.
And if you could just indicate to the jury sort of where in this photograph that would be.
The driveway was right here. The 2 garage doors, and then there was driveway right along here.
Now, in reference to that driveway, or in reference to your family at the time that lived at the house, about how many cars would there typically be when everyone's home parked in the driveway?
Could have been 4. Let me think. 1, 2, 3. I think 4.
And who would those vehicles be typically operated by, and what kind of vehicles are we talking about?
I had my car, which was a Cadillac SUV. My husband had his work car. And then we had, I think, a Ford Explorer. And then the kids were driving a Ford Escape, maybe?
All sort of bigger cars, all sort of SUVs, is that
Yeah.
correct to say?
Yeah.
If I could direct your attention to the next photograph. And again, what's up on the screen, is that what you have before you as the next exhibit?
Yes.
And just for the record, if you could read the number that's on that photograph now.
60?
And again, what's up on the screen, is that just another depiction of your home at that time?
Yes.
Now, when you open that door and Officer Lank is there and you invite him into your house to talk, said that you saw some cruisers, correct? Mm-hmm. Where in relation to your property were the cruisers when you opened the door and saw them? If you could direct the jury's attention in this photograph.
I believe they were right here. Somewhere here.
If I could direct your attention to the next photograph that's in there.
Yep.
And again, the photograph that's up on the screen, is that what you have before you?
Mm-hmm.
And again, I'm sorry to keep asking
Yes.
you this, but
Yes.
if you could read the number that's on the photograph.
63.
And so exhibit 63 up on the screen, if you could describe to the jury sort of what part of your property or abutting property are we looking at here?
I believe our property ended, somewhere along here.
So right about in the general area of the electrical box and fire hydrant you were talking about?
Yeah. Yep.
And that next door residence there, do you know offhand what the number was for that?
I don't. Maybe 36? I'm not sure.
Somewhere in the vicinity of your number 34.
Yeah.
And if I could direct your attention to the next photograph then?
Mm-hmm. 64?
Thank you.
Yeah.
On pace then. So with respect to this photograph, as far as
Such important photos here, giving you the lay of the land, the literal land owned by this witness and Brian Albert. And this is the yard in which ultimately John O'Keefe was found. So you put yourself in that yard that night, few hours, nobody sees that he's there, collapsed on the ground. Is there snow? Too much snow? Is he covered? Look like a rock? We'll take a break. We'll come back and continue to get more of this story playing out for us. This is a second-degree murder case against Karen Reed. Be right back. Back to Law and Crime. I'll tell you, this case has got me kind of tied into knots here. We're following the testimony in the very high-profile case against Karen Reed. She's charged with killing her police officer boyfriend. She's looking at murder charges, vehicular manslaughter charges. Allegedly, she backed her car, keep that in mind, backed her car into her boyfriend, John O'Keefe, and left him in the snow to die. She's facing life in prison if convicted. Now, Nicole Albert, one of the many Alberts in this case, is testifying. She's on the stand. Remember, she's the wife of Brian Albert, John O'Keefe's body found outside their home. Here we go.
sort of side door, do you see that in this photograph?
Yeah, the side door would be right here.
And there's sort of another door off to the right of the photograph, is that correct?
Yep, that door would go into the garage.
And typically, at least around this time of January or late January 2022, as far as the vehicles that you were talking about, would any of those vehicles go in the garage, or what was in the garage?
The garage was a little bit cluttered, so if there was a storm coming, we would try to arrange things so we could at least maybe get one or two of the cars in there, but otherwise we didn't put the cars in the garage, only if it was gonna be a storm, we would try to get some of them out of the driveway.
And with reference to these specific dates of January 28th and the 29th and this specific storm, do you recall anything as far as putting vehicles in the garage on those dates?
I don't. I'm not sure. I'm not sure if we had maybe put mine in there, because I had gotten picked up that night. I'm not sure.
And I believe, is there one more photograph that we have to talk about?
58?
May I approach, Ron?
Yeah. No.
Now, in addition, let me ask you this. At this time in January of 2022, did your family have any pets?
Yes.
And how many pets did you have?
We had one. We had a dog.
What was the dog's name?
Chloe.
And what type of dog was it?
She was a German Shepherd mix.
And how long had you had the dog at that point?
About 6 years, I believe.
And do you recall sort of when you got the dog, how you got the dog, or where you got the dog from?
We got the dog from a shelter in Texas.
And what type of, so shelter, or fair to say it's a rescue dog?
Yes.
And where did the dog typically go within the house?
It was when it was allowed anywhere in the house.
And as far as nighttime, would there be any sort of particular pattern of where the dog would sleep?
Yes, at nighttime when we went up to bed, it came up with us and it slept in our bedroom.
And at any point in time, during the time from when you returned from the waterfall to your home, where was the dog at that point?
Well, the dog had been up in the room, and I believe my husband, when we first got in, brought her down to let her out to go to the bathroom.
And when the dog went out to go to the bathroom when you lived at 34 Fairview Road, where would the dog go? How was that? Was it on a leash?
Well, she pretty much she knew the door where to go. So when she had to go, she would go to that door and she would just go out and run in the backyard.
Okay, this is all coming together. We've learned a lot about the Albert family. Now we're learning about the pets, which may lead us into where exactly the John O'Keefe body was found. Again, the homeowner on the stand here. With me, Katherine Lizardo, also Bob Hilla. So, Bob, let's talk about the old BOP, the burden of proof here, because we're into this case. I'd say we're probably halftime of the prosecution's case, and I'm still thinking I'm not even sure they've met the burden for a civil case in terms of proving causation that whatever Karen Reed did caused the death of John O'Keefe. If I had a wrongful death case, I'd be nervous. This is a criminal case.
Well, and, beyond a reasonable doubt here, what has the state shown? I mean, the jury's going to be asking, was the victim hit by the defendant in the first place? Even if that would happen, they're going to be asking, did the defendant know that she hit the victim? And the third part of it, to get to the murder charge, did she intend to hit him to do harm? I mean, those are big leaps here. We're not seeing any of that from this testimony, but I think what you're going to see is the jury's going to look at this testimony to try and see if the description of the scene and what happened that night and where everything was that night is consistent with the state's theory, because that's the one that's going to be tested here. The defense is going to come in response to that.
And Katherine, I think, we'd like to think the prosecution's going to knit all these things together at some point to tell the story they want to tell. But the jury's already trying to put stuff together. And I think at this point, they might be a little confused and maybe disappointed and not really sure where this case is going.
I agree. In terms of confused, there's a lot of names that we've heard so far in testimony from different Alberts, and there will be a lot more witnesses, the first responders. In terms of trying to piece that all together, I think it would be beneficial for the prosecution and even the defense to just have a family tree up there with pictures so people can relate who's who, because they're always asking who was at this interview when the first responders came. And those kinds of questions are critical for the jury because the defense is claiming that there was a cover-up. So it involves several people, several first responders that they need to remember. also we see pictures of the Brian Albert's house here. That's not how it looks like. When the jury went to view the location in Karen Reed's car last Friday, they had the jury view. The snow wasn't there anymore. So they're trying to piece that together, what they actually saw at the jury view and what the picture is showing. So as they sit there, they're probably distracted about that. So the prosecution is meticulously laying out what was then at the scene when it happened.
Yeah, and
what they saw.
I like the jury view. I think it's always great spatial orientation. Right. Where was the yard? Where was the car? Although they parked, this was weird. They parked the car right on the curb outside the house. I thought that was odd. Anyway, but you're right. The jury's now trying to synthesize from all these different pieces of evidence what's appropriate. We're going to get back for the conclusion of the direct testimony of this witness, and then I cannot wait for the cross. Be right back.